Hi everyone, this is Jason Barrack of Wall Street from Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street from Main Street podcast interview. Today's special guest is a returning guest. I also consider him a good friend in real life. He's the co-founder of Kennedy Financial, a nonprofit for financial counseling that helps people get their financial house in order. He's the author of Financial Judo. His YouTube channel should be over 1,000 subscribers, but due to YouTube censorship and how YouTube is treating people in our space, it's not over 1,000 subscribers, but maybe after this interview it will be. And he's been a successful cryptocurrency investor now for a while. So Phil Kennedy, thank you for coming back.
Thanks so much, Jason, and congratulations on your recent guests, Roger Ver and Trace Mayer, and now Philip Kennedy, all the most brilliant minds in the alternative financial media space.
Well, I've actually been interviewing Trace Mayer. I've known him for over 7 years. So he was telling me like more than 5 years ago, I think before even 2013, when Bitcoin was $1, he was trying to tell me about it. I don't have a technology background. I'm a finance guy. So he's a Renaissance guy. So he was trying to explain these things to me, and I don't really want to listen. My money was invested in other things. When Bitcoin, went up to 1,000 really quick, and then it crashed down to 100, that's really when I wanted to buy in 2013. And unfortunately, my business partner and I had a disagreement over buying the coins. But anyways, though, I want to talk to you about these Bitcoin futures contracts. So there's one Bitcoin futures contract that's in play right now, the Chicago Board of Options one. 2 additional futures contracts are planned in the near future by the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and the NASDAQ. How do you think this could potentially affect the Bitcoin price?
Well, in the short run, I think it could probably push it down. But I've been talking about this with a lot of folks, and simply because of my experience in dealing with the gold and silver markets, especially silver, and really being a victim of the fraudulent suppression that we have been, on the short side of and on the receiving end of here for about, 6 years, since 2011. When I hear something, like futures being applied to cryptocurrency, I was initially pretty apprehensive, but then I really got to thinking about it, and the reason that they've been successful in the gold and silver market is, I think, because none of us really know just how much physical metal they have on hand, right? How much is in their cupboards? If we were allowed to take a peek, I mean, we all remember, who is it? It wasn't Rick Santelli, but another CNBC guy, and he supposedly, was blindfolded and driven to one of these COMEX vaults, and he lifted up the gold bar, and the number was wrong, right? It wasn't even on any of the ledgers as belonging to them. So I think the advantage that we have with a decentralized ledger, an open ledger, like as it applies to Bitcoin, is that really savvy people are going to figure out quickly whether they have the digital goods. And it really won't take a fraud like the one in the gold and silver markets to be exposed. It'll happen rather quickly, I think. And, I have a long way to go in this area, but just kind of, studying cryptocurrency, what I know from forensic accounting and fraud investigations, which is kind of how I cut my teeth, I just don't see that working. And it seems like they're already having some issues. I mean, the very first day it opened, and by the way, if you haven't seen this video that somebody put together, it's excellent. I posted it to my Facebook page, and it was from this movie where this guy's a brand new prisoner, and the other prisoners are going to show him who's really in charge, right? And I think that's a great analogy to Bitcoin, because although the price was slammed right out of the gate, then it was up 20%, and the CBOE website crashed, and now we're seeing Litecoin pump the day after, up 200% over the last 5 days. So the tricks that they are used to playing in other markets, I don't think those old tricks are going to work as well in the cryptocurrency markets.
Yeah, so the exchanges are trying to say what they're saying in public, on TV, with the talking heads from mainstream financial media, in the mainstream financial articles I'm seeing about the Bitcoin futures contract, is this is supposed to reduce volatility over time. I don't really see that, especially with the paper price manipulation in physical gold and silver. I probably expect more volatility. But, the thing is, are any of these futures contracts actually going to settle in Bitcoin? Because I know the first one that's launching is only settling in cash. Are any of these actually planning to settle in Bitcoin?
I'm really not an expert in this area, so I couldn't tell you for sure, but I doubt it. And I think we've always known that as it applies to the gold and the silver market, a lot of these experts, the talking heads, they always say that it's written in the COMEX contracts that they can settle for cash. So why wouldn't cryptocurrency be any different? And they are really playing with fire on this one. I really think that they understand the crypto markets, but what they fail to understand is that this is an evolutionary technology that is bringing honesty and trust, much needed honesty and trust, back to our financial markets. And this is what we formerly had under a gold standard, and we haven't had since 1971. So I think that's what makes it really exciting. And I think, like I said, they're really playing with fire on this. I wouldn't want to be holding any long Bitcoin contracts because I feel like I'd probably just end up getting cash and not exactly the digital goods, which is what I would really want. So if someone hasn't really speculated in these markets before, I don't think now would be the time to start.
And it's, I think, 50% margin, I think I read, for the contract anyway. So you're not really getting that much leverage. It's not enough leverage for some of these crazy hedge fund traders anyway.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like folks are already losing interest. So we're going to see how this thing plays out. But for me, I really come at this from a financial counselor standpoint. And I just think that if I'm talking to a middle class person, my focus would be on, hey, let's get your hands on some digital currency, right? Let's teach you how to use a hardware wallet, maybe even a little wallet on your phone. Even Litecoin has an iOS wallet, Dash has an iOS wallet. Let's teach you how to get it on your phone, teach you how to buy some, and teach you how to hold it. And don't worry about all this other stuff that's going on because it's just a temporary distraction.
Are you worried that the elites, economic and political elites, are allowing the cryptocurrency prices to rise, and then they're going to consider, maybe when Bitcoin's over 50,000, maybe it goes over 100,000 years from now, maybe it goes even higher than 100,000, maybe they issue a windfall profits tax, maybe they take the blockchain technology, the code, since it's open source, and they start forcing people with legal tender laws into maybe digital dollars or digital euros or some type of one world currency with, to further implement this cashless society that these academic Keynesian economists and central bankers have been talking about for a couple of years now?
They could try, but I don't think it's going to work. I mean, this is a really big world. There are lots of places vying to be the next first world country, right? Doug Casey talks about it all the time, right? The entire continent of Africa is trying to improve itself. So unless everybody is all on board at the exact same time, and which is impossible, right? I mean, we can't get countries to even agree on where the Olympics should be held, then they're not going to really be able to trap folks in a digital roach motel. There will be countries that say, hey, you know what, if you don't like the Orwellian society you're living in where everything is tracked, come here, we'll let you buy in, it'll cost you maybe 100 Litecoin at that time or 10 Bitcoin. I mean, wasn't there some island in the Bahamas that was already doing this? There are going to be places like that want to attract new wealth, and they're going to try to lure people in through certain tax benefits or the ability to actually spend their wealth rather than give it up to their home government. So I just don't really see it working all that well. And, back at the Nexus conference, Roger Ver unveiled the idea that some of these crypto millionaires and billionaires may eventually just start their own country, right? I mean, this is a phenomenon that really would have sounded absurd even 5 years ago or even a year ago to most people, but it's not so much anymore because once you no longer need a central authority who decides what happens with money, then you really take away a lot of power. So, it's obviously probably too premature for some of these societies to begin to develop, but I think the potential is there and the possibilities are there, and there will be a wealth transfer, and there will be countries that benefit from allowing their citizens to keep their currency.
Doug Casey has also said that most libertarians are broke, and maybe in the past that was true. You know, while we would talk about Austrian school economics and our ideology, a lot of libertarians would buy too much physical gold and silver. They'd be way too overweighted. They'd talk about, you know, hyperinflation is just around the corner. And, you know, libertarians were some of the earliest adopters, along with computer programmers, into cryptocurrencies. So, you know, maybe now the libertarians will be financing new businesses, and these new businesses will not be as, let's say, totalitarian, as ridiculously political as YouTube, Google, Twitter, Facebook, some of these others that are just doing horrendous amounts of censorship. So hopefully, you know, that will create a brighter future now where there is libertarian financiers with capital that will create, you know, better types of companies that are that treat their customers better. Let's just say instead of targeting specific groups like either libertarians or people who are pro-Trump or regular conservatives or Republicans. But what got you interested in Litecoin? I know Litecoin's done very well for a while now. What got you interested in Litecoin? Because, you know, years ago I'd heard some of my friends talk about it. I know they bought some, but it really didn't interest me that much. Bitcoin interested me a lot. Ethereum was pretty interesting. What got you interested in Litecoin initially?
Well, I think to understand how I got here, we need to kind of talk about where I came from. Literally the first time I heard about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency was when Peter Schiff had Eric Voorhees on his radio show back in November 2013. And this was the first time Bitcoin had pumped all the way over $1,000, and I think Litecoin was hitting around 50 back then. And I had no idea what any of this was. And I kind of just blew it off, especially because Peter Schiff was right? This is the guy who called the housing bubble. And so to me, when he started saying things like, hey, why would anybody want a cryptocurrency when, sure, you're saying it's limited, but the number of currencies are limitless. So that argument kind of resonated with me. I'm like, hey, you know what? Peter makes a great point. You know, who would want a Bitcoin or a Litecoin when somebody can just turn around and make a Dogecoin and they could make 1 billion of them, and suddenly they say, hey, why do you want Bitcoin or Litecoin when mine's much cheaper? So I kind of ignored it for several years, and then all of a sudden 2016 happened, and here comes Bitcoin roaring back to its 2013 high. And I began to study it. I said, you know what, I really don't understand this. I need to get my arms around it. So I started educating myself. I started listening to speeches by Andreas Antonopoulos. I watched the documentary Magic Money, The Bitcoin Revolution. And I just tried to absorb as much as I could from guys like Trace Mayer, you know, people who had really been trailblazers in this area. And the thing that really resonated with me the most, Jason, because I am a CPA, was the idea that this is an open book. This is a decentralized ledger. And that's the beauty of it. Anybody can look at this thing at any moment in time. And I would think from any accountant's point of view, that is the evolution, right? The ability for anyone in the world to examine this thing, examine the books and records at any moment in time. What a beautiful thing. And so this is why I've been increasingly getting frustrated with Peter Schiff and guys like him. It seems like they have almost some kind of cognitive dissonance at this point. Sure, gold and silver were money, but we all have to admit that the plunge protection team, the COMEX, the LBMA have been extraordinarily successful at fraudulently suppressing and manipulating the price of gold and silver throughout most of our lifetimes. And now, you know, we've got these WikiLeaks cables that prove that this has been orchestrated for decades. But then comes this evolution in technology, Bitcoin, blockchain technology. And I think for a libertarian, this is really a dream come true. So I'm growing increasingly impatient with people who label this as a passing fad. This is not a passing fad. Cryptocurrency is here to stay. What I will concede is that certain cryptos may be replaced with others. There will be some destruction that we see along the way, but I don't think that's going to happen overnight. I don't think Bitcoin is suddenly going to be replaced by Dash in just a mere 24 hours. And then, well, hey, see, I told you so. But I would just, you know, I know you have a diverse audience, and I know that some of the things I'm saying are probably angering some folks. I would just encourage them, go out and perform your own due diligence, learn from other people. Don't just learn from the typical folks that we've always listened to from the alternative financial media. Really listen to a guy like Andreas Antonopoulos, other brilliant guys, Roger Ver, and just sit down with an open mind and collect as much information as you can. And then to really get to the point, the reason I've settled on Litecoin back in the beginning of the year, it was added to Coinbase. I watched Ethereum pump from $8 to $400, and a light switch just went off. And I said, you know what? When average people, especially millennials, really start to see that this money is better than the green kind they are carrying around in their wallets, they are going to adopt this. It's going to go like gangbusters. Nobody wants to carry around gold and silver. I had Andy Hoffman on my show a few weeks ago, and he's like, talk to a millennial. Do you think they're really going to store silver in a safe? That said, the beauty of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, with a company like Gold Money, you can take your Litecoin and your Bitcoin and spend it with them and store your physical metals with them or have it delivered to your house. So this is a win-win. I don't understand why people are against it. I had a guy named Keith Smith on from the Nexus Earth Project, and he said, look, gold and Bitcoin are complementary. You don't have to hate one and love the other. Just be glad you're alive to witness both of them at the same time, because it's really going to be an epic thing.
That's an interesting point that you make, and I think diversification is important. I've been talking about diversification for many years. I've been publicly stating for a couple years now, before Bitcoin had even broken above $1,000. Mo was making videos on this in January. Go back on my channel in the archives and check. I've been talking about this in my public interviews on other channels with more views and subscribers than mine, that people should be diversified. Not only should they be accumulating physical gold and silver, they should also be adding Bitcoin and cash. So I've been saying that for years. But personally, Phil, I've started buying some Litecoin at $101. So I'm in the game now. I've been watching it go up. The more I research Litecoin, the more I actually like it, more than Ethereum. So Ethereum worries me about the supply. I know there's more innovation going on in Ethereum with all these initial coin offerings, but there was big hacks with Ethereum. I think, there's a lot of advantages that Litecoin is having that the regular Bitcoin has not adapted to. So I don't think Bitcoin's going to die, but I think there's an opportunity for Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash and maybe some other altcoins to come in and take market share from Bitcoin for, cheaper transactions, faster transactions, as people start paying in the future, with cryptocurrencies. I've also been, Phil, since, I still like precious metals. By the way, Peter Schiff still won't admit gold and silver are manipulated. I actually haven't heard him go on the record and say, Gatto was right, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee was right, gold and silver are manipulated. I have not heard him say those words. Wow. I still don't think he's admitted that physical gold and silver are manipulated. So he tells people to accumulate. He's a smart guy, a brilliant Austrian school economist, but he has many flaws in other parts of his life. I've been accumulating more physical silver recently when silver, got below 16. At silver below $16 an ounce, where I was telling you this before the recording, Phil, we're at a price now where the primary silver miners, the higher cost ones, they're losing $1 or $2 an ounce now producing the metal. So, I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. Anything can happen in the short term. But, this is a situation here where if silver is going to stay under $16 an ounce, I'm going to start backing up the truck now. I haven't really started huge buys of physical silver since, that bear market, the really bad bear market in 2014 and 15 when silver was barely able to stay around 15 and even drop below 15. But I'm considering, starting to buy 10-ounce bars or larger with my silver purchases going forward in addition to crypto. Because I think, we've gotten to the point now where the miners, the capital is just not available. And I think the copper miners have been keeping the silver supply with the silver byproduct.
I think that's a great idea. Honestly, if we look back to 2000 or 2001, and gosh, don't you wish you could get silver at $3 or $4? I think you essentially are at this point. When you think about all the quantitative easing, 0% interest rates, all the nonsense that's going on with the manipulation in our financial markets, I think buying $15 to $16 silver is probably even a better deal. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And yeah, if it goes lower, just keep accumulating if that's what you like.
Exactly. And as long as, you're buying some crypto and some silver, you're a little bit diversified, and that's probably a good thing in this market. And something you pointed out as well, I mean, right now hedge fund managers are calling all the assets and everything bubble. We just had one of the most respected money managers on Wall Street, Stanley Druckenmiller, just said that the central bankers have drastically overinflated asset prices and there's going to be hell to pay at some point in the future. Well, Phil, the only assets that aren't in a bull market for the most part, all the regular assets, stocks, bonds, real estate are all in a bull market.
Yeah.
Even base metals have had a rally. Cryptocurrencies are on fire. The only assets that have not been in a bull market are basically gold and silver and precious metal mining shares.
In terms of mining shares, I've experienced my own frustrations there. We just finally saw the lid maybe coming off a little bit in 2016, and just as people started to enter the market, here it comes again, right? And it's just the old analogy, right? Charlie Brown charging Lucy's football. I think until I really see silver allowed to move above $21 and gold above $13.50, I even joked that I think Bitcoin gold might get above $13.50 before real actual gold. But until I see gold above $13.50, I don't think I'm going to trust the mining shares personally. Kind of going back to what I was just talking about with crypto, the beauty of cryptocurrency is that I think the common man can trust it at this point. Even if you don't totally understand blockchain technology, Venezuelans and people from Zimbabwe already recognize the fact that this is a far superior currency than the one issued in their home country. And that rule definitely applies to the U.S. too. So, why were we investing gold and silver and mining stocks? Well, because we're trying to protect ourselves and outpace inflation. But, our grandparents didn't, or even especially our great-grandparents, they didn't feel the need to do that kind of speculation. They were just middle-class folks who were just trying to make ends meet, raise a family, and retire with dignity. So they didn't feel this pressure to speculate in markets where they didn't really have any expertise. But you and I, Jason, we feel like we need to do that because we're trying to compete against the Federal Reserve that has an unlimited amount of currency that they can run off a printing press, or even just do so from a computer with the press of a button. So, kind of hearkening back to how we opened the interview, I think this is why cryptocurrency is so great. And I posted on my Facebook page, something to the effect of, ever notice how stockbrokers and financial advisors, most of them, they don't seem to like cryptocurrency? And the hate mail started flooding in. How dare you? You're disparaging our profession. And my point is, for the common man, the evolution of cryptocurrency may eliminate their profession altogether. Certainly,
I don't know if it's going to eliminate it, but it's going to take assets under management away probably if the total cryptocurrency market cap continues to grow like crazy, say into the multi-trillion range. I've worked in that industry. I've disclosed this. I was a stockbroker for a while. I worked at one not very good firm, and then I interviewed at a bunch of other firms, and they're basically all the same. Maybe there's some smaller ones that are not quite as bad, but I mean, most of those jobs are just sales jobs. So you're selling whatever, for the most part, is the highest commission product. You're trying to dump it on your clients, and you're not giving your clients the ability to make money. I mean, most of it is just making sure you bring in more assets under management, making sure that you in a lot of cases, I mean, during the financial crisis, my dad's stockbroker, Phil, didn't even pick up the phone for him, and he called her a bunch of times. She didn't even want to talk to him or meet him in person. It was really, really deplorable
right.
How the treatment that he received. So
right. So why not move to an ever appreciating currency that is trustless and immutable, like Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dash, or pick your favorite, right? You don't have to end up in one. And that's why I'm saying this is going to be highly disruptive to the financial services industry, because we've all been corralled in this big lie, right? Social Security, 401ks, IRAs. This is how the middle class needs to be set up to retire with dignity. And it's all nonsense, because it was proven before that we didn't need that. All we needed was honest money. And you could pile up honest money over a lifetime and then eventually, live out your golden years. But now, because we're paying for great society and the war on drugs and the war on terror, an endless big government, we all feel this need to speculate. So that's all I'm getting at. I think that, it's going to be volatile in the medium term. Someone challenged me on that. They're like, well, the reason stockbrokers and financial advisors don't want to put their folks into cryptocurrency is because it's way too volatile. And I'm saying, well, of course it is. The collapse of the Federal Reserve System is not going to be a smooth ride. And that's what this is doing. So I would just, again, encourage everybody, really begin to educate yourself, because that's really what we're witnessing right now in slow motion. And sure, as I look here on CoinMarketCap, the market cap of all cryptocurrencies is not even $500 billion yet. But we're really just getting started. In fact, it's 499.5. So maybe as we go through the interview, we'll hit that milestone. But this is just getting started. You're hearing a lot of people call it a bubble, and it's not a bubble. I mean, can you imagine if they called the housing bubble a bubble, and we were only talking about $500 billion? This is nothing in the whole scheme of things. Well, not to say that it won't become a bubble one day, or that certain specific cryptocurrencies might become a bubble, but I'm talking about the overall cryptocurrency market is not anywhere near a bubble yet.
So I think it is a bubble. We were talking about this before we started recording. I think it is a bubble, but the mistake I made and why I sold my Ethereum, I bought my Ethereum between 9 and 13 a coin, which was a good purchase to buy it at, but I sold it at 87. The reason I sold it was, when you think of something as a bubble, you want to totally avoid it. If you're a trained financial professional and you're taught to think, things in cash flow, free cash flow, looking at a balance sheet. But just because something is in a bubble doesn't mean it's going to pop immediately. So you can ride this bubble. It could go higher with limited corrections, or the corrections could be very short and, the dips are bought. It could be like this for another few years, and there could be thousands of % return in addition to the thousands of % that people have already made. So, if you have thousands of % return, I have, so I don't want to ask you any numbers, Phil, but I have friends who I've spoken to who have made hundreds of thousands of dollars off cryptocurrency speculations just in the last couple of years. And so, maybe they should take some money off the table now, where every 20 or 30% higher it goes. But, just because something's in a bubble doesn't mean it's going to pop immediately. So there's life-changing wealth potential here, because there's actually some, technological breakthrough with the blockchain. So the people who are saying, this is tulip, so maybe this bubble is already larger on a percentage basis than the tulip bubble. That's the article that Zero Hedge is running. But tulip bubbles didn't have bulbs. The tulip bulb bubble did not have blockchain technology backing it. Game-changing, internet type of changing technology behind it. So it's not a full apples to apples comparison. So this thing could go a lot longer than people think. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Now, I'm not telling everyone to put all their money in. Obviously, I said, I still own, my largest holding still physical gold and silver. And you said you're not owning mining shares. I don't own a lot of mining shares anymore. I just own the royalty and streaming companies that the more gold and silver manipulation there is, the more deals for cash flow they can do. They're the only ones so the more manipulation there is, the more money they can make. Look at the stock charts on Franco-Nevada, on Royal Gold, on Silver Wheaton, on Sandstorm Gold. They're starting to do well despite the metals price not going up. So Franco-Nevada and Royal Gold, I think those shares are up the last 4 or 5 years over 40%, despite the gold price, doing nothing. So there's you just have to understand what's going on in the market right now. The regular miners can't make any money. But anyway, though, my point was that I think, just because this is a bubble doesn't mean it's going to crash anytime soon, and doesn't mean that if you're a financial professional, you shouldn't put any money in. In fact, Phil, I'm actually starting to see in this networking website where I network with regular Wall Street people, I see the word Bitcoin and blockchain mentioned, like pretty much everyone is mentioning it now.
Yeah. I saw Bruce Fenton post something to the effect of, the number of people working in blockchain technology has increased by 2,000 in the last year, but the number of people who understand blockchain technology has increased by 8. So yeah, this is definitely an area where a lot of people are suddenly, I used to hear them on different podcasts. They never mentioned the word Bitcoin, and now I see ads for them on Zero Hedge calling themselves a crypto genius. And I'm just kind of shaking my head like, I admit up front that I'm no crypto expert and I'm still learning. But I'm glad that we differ on this because I think it's interesting for your audience. And Jason and I, we're friends and we talk a lot and communicate a lot. I think cryptocurrency is not the bubble. I think cryptocurrency is a reflection of the bubble. And here's how I support that argument. When you take $1 and you buy a Litecoin or a Bitcoin, you are removing that dollar from a fiat system and you are placing it on a trustless, immutable, decentralized ledger. That dollar is no longer in the hands of Janet Yellen or her successor, Jerome Powell. That dollar, as long as the purchaser is willing to keep it there, is now protected. So I think the cryptocurrency market is really, I posted this on my Facebook page. I like to use analogies, and this one worked for me. It's almost like an honest sponge that's soaking up these dirty dollars and washing them and making them clean again. And I would encourage folks to really think of it that way. Don't think that you're buying a Bitcoin. Think of it that you are removing it from this Federal Reserve fiat system. And that's why I feel more comfortable with it. That's why I'm able to sleep at night. And I'm not having returns nearly as good as some of your other guests and friends. But that's only because I really started to get my arms around it in the beginning of the year. I was the term normie that I'm hearing, is applied to people who are just buying their first Litecoin today. That was me back in the beginning of the year, back in January, right, when I finally opened my Coinbase account. But the experience of watching Ethereum go from $8 to $400 made me realize that there is something very special going on. This technology is highly disruptive. I don't think it's a bubble. I think it's a reflection of the much bigger world currency bubble. And look out. Well, I think we're really just getting started. Like I said, we're only up to a $500 billion. I'll refresh my page here. Nope, we're still not there yet, 498. But, this is really exciting. And just as it should have been exciting to, and I don't want to draw any comparisons, it should have been exciting to go through the evolution of the internet. I'd say right now, we're in about 1994 in terms of comparing Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to the evolution of the internet.
So within this global everything bubble that central bankers have created, fiat currency and credit bubbles, all over the globe, there's bubbles of different sizes. So I'll rephrase this a little bit differently. Kind of the minimum bubble size now, there's lots of, I call them economic landmines. There's lots of economic landmines or credit bubbles or asset bubbles that could burst in the near future that are 1 trillion in size or more. 10 years ago during the 2008 financial crisis, there weren't that many of these. But with all the intervention, the tens of trillions that has been created, there's even more of these. Now, there's actually real fundamental value with the technology behind Bitcoin, with blockchain, that is driving innovation in the future. But, I have heard anecdotal stories about, Bitcoin bubble. One of my buddies travels a lot. He's a really successful real estate investor for cash flow rental properties, travels all over the country looking for deals. And what he told me was he was in LA a couple weeks ago, and the valets were nonstop talking about trading Bitcoin and making money off crypto. So, what's the saying about when the shoe shine boy is giving you stock tips? That was, something that was happening. So I'm not saying these cryptos are going to crash. I'm just saying more people are waking up and seeing that it's an opportunity to get rich quick. The other story anecdotal was actually today. I was on a Target run at lunch, and I was in an elevator, and I don't know if they were stay-at-home dads or, they were just beta males or what, but so they were in the elevator. I was, getting to my car with my Target stuff, and, they were talking about using credit cards on crypto exchanges to put $250, whatever the maximum amount they could on all the crypto exchanges to start buying cryptos. And so, they didn't look very financially sophisticated. They just looked like two schmucks. One of them though was pretty affluent because he had on, one of those new $1,000 trendy Canadian Goose jackets. So he was trying to be hipster or cool. But, I don't think they were very financially sophisticated, and they were talking about trying to get rich quick and make money off this. So, I'm not saying anything's going to crash right away, but these are anecdotal stories that we do hear about bubbles because, remember, during the technology bubble, things got so crazy at one point, Phil, that at sports bars, instead of having, like, football games or basketball or baseball on, they were having CNBC for day trading technology stocks. So, I don't know if we're quite there yet, but, this bubble could go on for years, but it's there's also a lot of evidence that a lot of people are starting to wake up. I'm seeing posts on Facebook, Phil, I'm sure you get this too, from people I didn't even know liked investing or finance. I didn't even know read any investing or finance articles, bragging that they've been accumulating Bitcoin for months now. A little bit of their paycheck has been going into Bitcoin. I wasn't even aware these people knew anything about finance or anything at all, or cared.
Well, I think if I was allowed to offer a rebuttal, sure, there are going to be non-financially savvy people that benefit from the evolution in cryptocurrency, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily just a bubble. If the Fed started doing the right thing and Trump hadn't picked Jerome Powell, say Trump had picked Jim Grant to be the Federal Reserve chairman, right? And Trump came out and said, you know what? As I said on the campaign trail and in the debates, stock market's still in a huge bubble. By the way, that 4% unemployment rate that just came out, yeah, that's phony too, and I'm not going to claim credit for that. If I'm starting to see things like that, then I'd say, ooh, you know what? People might be duped into going back into the dollar again. And maybe the dollar temporarily for another few years will be able to sustain itself. And maybe in the short run, another 2 some years, maybe we'll see Bitcoin fall by 90% again, which it's done like, 3 or 4 times now since its inception. But I think really what you're seeing is just beneficiaries who maybe have smarter friends who've given them the word. But for the most part, I still think only, even though they just recently came out and said Coinbase now has more accounts than Schwab, I think that your average American has never heard of Bitcoin, and certainly less than half even know somebody who owns any. And maybe 5% probably own some and actually know how to, buy it and put it on a wallet and store it and keep it safe. So I just think it's way too premature to be calling this a bubble with everything else that's going on, right?
So I think there's a big distinction, Phil, between saying something's a bubble and then calling it a crash. So I'm not calling it a crash.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
And but there on the counterpoint there would be that in terms of apps, Coinbase is now the #1 app. It surpassed YouTube on the Apple App Store. So that's another warning sign. But I don't know. So I think we could see Bitcoin at least probably test 50,000 in a year or two, maybe even faster than that. And Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who's an extremely smart guy, he thinks there's no reason why Bitcoin can't go to 100,000 in a couple years.
Right. And I heard McAfee say something similar. He's a bright guy. I think one of the things that all of this is contingent on, though, is we really need to see crypto become more mainstream in terms of spending it. My wife, she's getting very curious. She's seeing my crypto portfolio rise and, explain to me, Phil, how this is a benefit to me. Well, hey, hun, there's overstock.com and look at all this great furniture you can buy, and look at expedia.com and we can go on a nice trip to maybe Europe next year. So I really think that is what the common man needs access to. If Amazon makes an announcement in 2018, hey, we're now accepting Litecoin and Dash and maybe even Bitcoin Cash, that is going to be a game changer. Look out above. Is that even an expression? But that's the key. People need to be able to spend it. And for some of the critics of cryptocurrency, that is a solid point. If I think there's some company, I'll try to find it here. It's called Uplift. No, there's eGifter and Uphold and Purse. These are all ways to begin to spend your cryptocurrency, but it needs to become more easy. I think there's an awesome opportunity out there for someone. Maybe Apple just needs to put a Bitcoin wallet on their new phones and preload it so that somebody like my mother could use it, right? Hey, I just bought this new phone and it's already got $100 worth of Bitcoin on it, right? And she goes to Target and she can just pull up her QR code and spend it. That's going to be that pizza effect, right? Some poor guy sold his Bitcoin for 2 pizzas and 10,000 Bitcoin. That's really what we need to see in order for this thing to maybe be more credible than it is at the present time.
And that's over $120 million pizza now. Whoops. Or the guy who lost, like, he had like thousands of Bitcoins on his hard drive, and and then his computer got destroyed, and now his hard drive's like buried under a landfill. This was in England. This story was years ago.
Yeah, so, I saw that, and you know what? I'm rooting for that guy. There was some documentary about how the worst video game of all time, and like Atari threw them all away. And some guy was doing a documentary about it, and he did a dig, and they were able to say, well, between 1984 and December and November, it's buried in this exact location. So they ended up finding those games. So with this guy having $100 million worth of incentive, I'm hopeful that he finds it.
It was actually $80 million worth of Bitcoin, I think, when Bitcoin was at 1,000. That story was in 2013,
wow.
I believe. So it was a lot of Bitcoin. But what's your opinion on the Bitcoin to Litecoin ratio? So now, if I'm looking at a chart on, let me see here, on Crypto Compare, which is a new website that one of my other friends just told me about, and the Bitcoin to Litecoin ratio was in a trading range for quite a while, and it looks like it's broken out now in favor of Litecoin. So do you expect this to continue, where Litecoin's going to start to gain on Bitcoin?
I do, and I've been excited about this, frankly, since Bitcoin, like the Litecoin to Bitcoin ratio got down to 1%, 0.01. I probably traded my Bitcoin for Litecoin a little too early because it kept falling and falling. And I think it got down to like 0.006 or something like that. But again, if Jason and I had the ability to foresee financial markets, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. We'd be just sitting on our yacht drinking, Grand Marnier or whatever and smoking cigars. But yes, the ratio, I see it continuing to go up because it is on Coinbase, because it seems like we just saw Charlie Lee on CNBC. I'm getting lots of messages on Facebook about interest from people who are entering the crypto markets for the very first time. They see Bitcoin, they see the slow transaction speeds, they see its $17,000 price tag, and now almost 18,000. And they say to themselves, well, which one should I buy? Maybe I'll just buy the cheaper one. And they don't know anything else. And in fact, they're making the better decision. I mean, whenever you go from one exchange to another, you have to sell your Bitcoin, convert it into Litecoin, and then transfer it so that it'll get there quicker. It's a lower fee. It's just great. It has, in my opinion, everything on the upside in comparison to Bitcoin, other than the fact that it really can't be traded with 95% of the crypto markets like Bitcoin can. So I don't have a guaranteed target. If gun to my head, I'd say it'll probably get up to 4%. And I think Charlie Lee's right. By the end of Trump's first term, it'll get up to the natural 4-to-1 ratio that it has with Bitcoin.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see before this bull market in cryptocurrency is over. I think we'll see Litecoin over $1,000 per coin, maybe in a couple years. I mean, the way things are going, that might be way too slow of a prediction. I mean, it could happen in a couple months the way things are going right now, but I don't want to make that type of crazy prediction. So, maybe we have a correction or two along the way, but I could definitely see Litecoin at $1,000 per coin, perhaps a little bit higher than that. But, if Bitcoin goes over 100,000, I mean, people aren't going to want to go buy one Bitcoin. People are going to want to buy something cheaper, like you said. And Litecoin, there's not a lot of other options on Coinbase. So, besides Ethereum, there's only, and regular Bitcoin, there's only Litecoin right now on Coinbase, although I think Bitcoin Cash is supposed to start trading in January 1st. So at least that's when I was told my hard fork, my Bitcoin Cash coin is supposed to be available to me for trading.
Yeah, and honestly, the longest distance in the world is the amount of time between the time you hit the send button on Bitcoin till the time you actually receive it to your other wallet. And the longer that takes, the more you're starting to get worried and concerned. And I was doing that back over the summer. People said, hey, get your Bitcoin off of Coinbase and, get it to another wallet that's going to honor the fork more quickly. So I did that, and there was one day where I think it took like over 12 hours. I can't remember, but I just remember thinking like, okay, I'm getting nervous. And the beauty of Litecoin is, you hit the refresh button 10 minutes later, and it's already pending, right? There's a certain amount of relief that comes with that. So I just like it so much better from all angles. And there's a lot of Bitcoin purists out there, and they tell you all the reasons why that it's, it's like the one true religion, right? Bitcoin. And I think that for the average person, it's better to have a basket and be diversified and, rebalance as necessary, right? I need to do that after we get off this podcast. As a result of the pump in Litecoin, I'm over 50% weighted. So I need to sell some of my gains and get into Dash and Monero and other ones. So I think that's the only prudent thing to do.
I was actually going to ask you about that. So are you planning on your podcast and show then to cover more of the altcoins like Dash, Ripple, Monero, Bitcoin Cash? Are you buying any of these things? And how difficult is it to buy these things on exchanges and store them? Is it a lot more difficult than going to Coinbase and then moving them to another wallet?
It's not way more difficult, but you definitely have to educate yourself. I've gone as far as to, buy the Coinigy application for trading. I'm on 8 different exchanges. I can tell you off the air which one is the worst by far. There's one out there that's just
let's not put it out there in public. I don't want any lawsuits.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna put it out there in public. I wouldn't want to do that to Wall Street for Main Street. But I do like one exchange in particular. It has most of the cryptos out there that you would find in the top 100. And I'm really trying to find exposure to what will be the next Ethereum. I look for smart guys, which is how I found Jason in the first place. Another guy I had on my show who I like a lot is Chris Coney from Cryptoversity. And he really likes EOS, Dan Larimer, and that project. I'm not a tech person. I don't really understand this stuff, but I always have followed the smart people. And from what I understand, this has the ability to do something like Ethereum did, but faster, cheaper, better. So, I have some exposure there. I also like Cardano. I saw Charles Hoskinson speak there on YouTube for the Nexus conference, and some of the things he said, including calling Jamie Dimon a tapeworm, really resonated. So I was like, you know what? Warren Buffett, he always says he invests in people, not necessarily just ideas. So I think there are some new titans out there who are going to become the future Bill Gates, the future Jeff Bezos, the future Warren Buffett, and those two Facebook brothers might be just the tip of the iceberg.
So let's switch gears, and for the remaining part of the interview, let's not talk about cryptocurrency anymore, although we could talk about it a lot longer because it's so very interesting. I find this, we're living through a pretty amazing part of history right now. But let's talk about the December rate hike. So you think this is basically locked in then?
Yeah, I really haven't been paying much attention to it. I'm going to interview a guy that you've had on your show before tomorrow to talk about the announcement. But frankly, I find the whole thing to be a farce at this point. And look no further than Trump's Fed pick, right? We have been dealing with this for a really long time. Sure, if they bump it up a little bit, I would want to see something like they bumped it up a full percent, really getting hawkish. But I mean what I said earlier. We're witnessing the collapse of the Federal Reserve System in slow motion. Mike Maloney used to talk about this all the time, right? Every 40 years, there's a new, what's he call it? A new money, a new currency, or a new financial system instituted. And
about 40 or 50 years on average throughout history.
And we've been way overdue. From 1971 to 2008, it was already overdue, and they've managed to hold it together with spit and duct tape, but it's not working. And everybody knows that. And no matter what your persuasion is, we can all agree that Donald Trump coming out of left field to become president of the United States is indicative of the fact that there are serious underlying problems. And the common man is not doing all that well. And they feel it. No matter what their government is telling them, they feel it. I don't care if you're telling me unemployment is sub 5%. I feel it. And so the Fed has lost control. I think they're probably talking about cryptocurrency. I think even some of the presidents have come out and said, yeah, we're scared of it. And they should be. I think that's really what we're witnessing here. It's something bigger. It's something bigger than just a passing fad. I think that this really is going to be the new way we use currency. It's going to be with blockchain technology.
Yeah, and so the asset prices, the stock markets, the economic data that's coming out in the United States, it makes it look like things are doing good. There's huge improvement there. And so I think beneath the surface, the rot is actually getting worse and worse. We see these stories on Zero Hedge that millennials, a lot of college kids are selling their plasma. A lot of young college people who just graduated college. Over 2 million women, I think, have signed up for seekingarrangement.com to, try to sell themselves on a date for sex or something to pay off their bills. It's getting kind of crazy. And, I like tax cuts. I agree we should have tax cuts. The problem is the debt is already so large. And the thing is, I haven't heard really anyone in the mainstream talk about this, Phil. Tax cuts without corresponding decreases in federal government spending, they're not really going to do much good. So for the private sector, it'll be good, but the government hasn't stopped spending or its control over size and spending in the economy. So this is going to lead longer term to larger budget deficits, larger national debt, and I think a lot worse stagflation in the real economy for people on Main Street like you and me.
Right. And these are real serious concerns. But what are we talking about instead? Well, we're talking about the mean things that the president maybe said 20, 25 years ago and how he's unfit to hold the office. And by the way, Al Franken already resigned. So, this is the climate. This is the one we're living in. And now it's time for Donald Trump to step down, too, because this is a bipartisan issue and we can't have it. And so, Americans, they're just going to pay the price again. They never get a fair shake. But again, I keep on harping on it. And I know that there are a lot of people like myself who are bitter that they've never seen the appreciation in their metals that we were all hoping for. But, it's kind of like the analogy that I used on my show, the story of the drowning man, and he's waiting for God to rescue him. And, a boat comes by and a helicopter and, a life vest, and he ignores them all because God's going to save him, right? And if he gets to heaven, and then he says, God, why didn't you save me? Hey, I sent a boat, and I sent a helicopter, I sent a raft. Why didn't you accept those? Clearly, cryptocurrency is a way out. And, sure, it didn't come the way we wanted it. Sure, some people probably have a kilo silver bar sitting in their basement, and they were waiting to buy a house with it. But, they've managed to hold it down a lot longer than we ever thought. So, go toward the path of least resistance, and don't succumb to the idea, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that all our transactions are going to be monitored, because that's not the case. There is such a thing as Monero. Back to McAfee, right? He says, this is basically untraceable, and there'll be a next generation of something that comes out that's even better. So, I think this is our chance, and take advantage of it. It's still early.
What I've been trying to tell people is that they could have been trading cryptocurrency, and if they still really like physical metal a lot, and I do still like physical metal a lot, they could have just been buying metal with some of their huge trading profits after they pay the tax man, of course.
Of course.
So, you just have a lot of stubborn people, and we've seen this, with Andy Hoffman when he was writing articles on Miles Franklin, and supposedly he wrote a couple positive articles about Bitcoin, and I was told that Miles Franklin got almost 2,000 negative hate emails for saying anything nice about Bitcoin, and that, their customer service department was overwhelmed, and it was just they were shocked about the amount of negative backlash that they got.
Right. Well, you got to give him credit. He stood up for what he believed in, and he called them the twin destroyers of the fiat regime. Really, if that's why you were buying gold and silver, then don't ignore cryptocurrency. They're complementary. And by the way, Jason, every time I've ever had to buy silver or gold, guess what I had to use? Right? I had to use currency. So why not have an ever appreciating currency that you can then use to spend on gold and silver? I just don't see why people would have a problem with it.
Yeah, and so I got a couple more topics for you before I let you go real quickly. You wanted to talk about massive fraud and no rule of law. I mean, the stuff going on in the Department of Justice, in the FBI, it's really unbelievable. What's your take on it as someone that has lived outside Washington, D.C. for a while now?
Well, I will tell you this. I follow Charles Ortel, who you've had as a guest on Wall Street from Main Street, and he's a great guy. And I kind of look at him as a modern day Harry Markopolos. He is out there. He's tweeting like, hey, look at this, look at that. And it should just be obvious to everyone that we no longer have the rule of law. We're ruled by men. And the law only really applies to little people. And big people are able to get away with whatever they want. And that's pretty sad because this used to be a pretty serious country. And that's why people wanted to come here, because we had real rules. And to see what we're living through right now is pretty discouraging. And I read Charles's tweets and I'm like, hey, you know, great, thanks for keeping us updated, but nothing's ever going to happen. We're basically a banana republic now. Unfortunately, we're heading the wrong direction. We can't even get down to the real serious matters when it comes to taxes. Instead, we're going to talk about, you know, what did Trump say 20 years ago, or how did he hug somebody? So it's obvious where this is heading, you know?
That's a good point about the banana republic and third world, you know, crackpot dictatorships, because, you know, normally when a new regime comes in one of those types of countries without rule of law, the other opposing party, they get retaliated against. So the military or the like the CIA in those types of countries will be the ones, you know, digging up dirt and throwing their political opposition in jail. And, you know, that's what the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton's blessing, tried to do to Trump when he was a candidate. I mean, there was illegal spying, illegal unmasking. The fake dossier was used as justification for, you know, wiretaps and all this other illegal spying. And, you know, this has just gone crazy. And it seems, you know, the Trump-Russia thing, it doesn't really have much legs because Manafort is being indicted on something that basically took place more than 10 years before he even worked for Trump. And, you know, I've had to block hardcore Democrats on Twitter who ignore this reality. And it's just gotten totally ridiculous. I mean, they're willing to compromise, Phil. They're willing to do anything. There's people out there willing to do anything to win politically. They're willing to, you know, break laws, commit felonies, basically commit treason. And that's I'm not saying every Democrat is like this, but I'm saying there's enough people within government and at the top of the Democrat Party who are willing to do this to where, you know, we're in a very dangerous time to be an American now if you don't have the right politically correct opinion.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, it's like you turn around, Trump hasn't even celebrated his 1-year anniversary as president, and you're already hearing the I word almost every week. Not a week, you're impeached. And even Bernie Sanders came out and said, hey, guys, we might want to settle down with this impeachment talk because it might be a little bit too soon. And he's absolutely right. You know, if you don't give Trump a real shot, it's kind of like if you hire somebody. From Bernie?
No way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if you hire somebody and you don't give them a real fair chance to do their job and you're just pelting them left and right. The public isn't going to believe that he deserved to be impeached in less than 18 months, you know, without just clear evidence of something that's just so obvious that, you know, it would make even a seasoned DC lobbyist blush, right? So,
well, 40% of the country didn't like the outcome of the presidential election. Remember, they were talking about eliminating the Electoral College. Right. One of the reasons we have the Electoral College is that way the major cities in the country just don't control all the voting. And you know, so then all the major people in the government aren't picked out by 6 major cities or 7 major cities.
Right. Well, I think we're still talking as if, you know, this is a serious country, and that's the real problem, is that we aren't anymore. And that's the sad part. You know, I've joked, I saw my brother posted this thing, and it was some young millennial holding up a sign said that we're going to eat the rich. And I said, well, unfortunately you're not, because they're going to take their Ledger Nano S or their Keep Key or whatever, and they're going to move. They're going to leave, because this is no longer the country that our parents grew up in. And that's the sad part. So we'll continue. You know, I know you're documenting this on Wall Street from Main Street with all your great guests, but I think that we're not playing by the same rules anymore. The outcomes are going to be much different than anyone could have ever anticipated.
The real economy on Main Street, Phil, like you wanted to talk, last point, you wanted to talk about, you know, people, Christmas shopping, personal finance. Isn't there a news story going around out there that people on Main Street, regular middle class or below middle class or working class people, still haven't paid off a lot of their Christmas debt on their credit card from last year?
Right. And that's the thing. This is kind of where I do align myself with a Dave Ramsey type. Christmas is not an emergency. And that's really the whole reason I got in this game. I wanted to be a financial counselor to middle class and lower middle class people. Set up a budget, set up a savings. Don't become a victim of all this marketing and advertising. And if you have enough Facebook friends, you're led to believe that you're probably supposed to be spending like $20,000 on Christmas. It's not an emergency. Put some money away, have it in a little savings account, have some Litecoin, don't overspend. You can't invest until you save. And
100% agreed.
Yeah. So
I've been contacted. I'm not sure about you, Phil, but I've been contacted by people who want me to help them pick out different investments like cryptocurrency, stocks, precious metal, a mixture of things, and they only have $500. Right. And I tell them, well, you need to go through your budget, and you need to figure out a way to start saving $100 or more a month, and you need to build up some savings and talk to me in a year or two.
Right. But unfortunately, our educational system has failed almost everybody. So they don't even really know that. But that's good.
I think it's intentionally failed. Which is why I want to create, this revolutionary educational technology company. I think people are intentionally taught how to not balance the checkbook, how to not save. Look, the credit card companies are predatory. They're opening up, they're trying to get you to, as a college kid, if you're 18 years old, you can sign up for a credit card without your parents. And you don't know, you don't have any discipline. I mean, most people don't even read the contract that they sign. They want a free towel or whatever, and they're given a credit card, a free college sports team towel or something.
Right. Yeah, it's insidious. And the worst part about paying for things on credit is that you are paying for experiences that you formerly had, and you're doing so with money that you had to currently work hard to earn. So unfortunately, a lot of us have made that mistake, and we had to learn that lesson. But, don't let Christmas and peer pressure be turned into an emergency. Set up a little budget, and even set it up way in advance, right? Even if it means putting money away for yourself, well in advance over the months leading up to Christmas. Do something like that so that, you can feel like you're spending your own money and not a bunch of debt that probably won't be paid off until way after the following year's Christmas.
Yeah, and unlike, investment bankers or hedge fund managers, we can't, call up our friends at a central bank and get them to wire us over, more money, which basically, if you're an economic or political elite with the right connections, either in Washington, D.C. or on Wall Street or in another country, you're connected to their central bank, you can get those types of favors done. And that's the kind of, that's why the wealth gap has been widened. It's not because of free markets or capitalism. It's been because of, these central banks and corrupt government, and no government's doing a good job. There's a lot of libertarians and a lot of Austrian school people that are defending China. China's a mess too now. China's got an enormous credit bubble. Yeah, they bought a lot of gold for years now, and they may have 20,000 tons of gold. It's a lot of gold. But when you're running credit bubbles into the tens of trillions of dollars, gold at $13,000 isn't going to pay off all your debt either. So, no government right now, Phil, on a bunch of different ways on planet Earth really is doing a good job right now. If our listeners, though, are interested in your financial counseling, how do they contact you, and what types of services do you offer?
Well, so I still do everything pro bono because I do have a day job, forensic accountant, fraud investigator, but I'm a personal financial counselor. I have an accreditation. I'm an accredited financial counselor. So I do everything pro bono. They can find my website, philip.kennedy.com, philipkennedy.com. They can hit me up on Twitter and Facebook You can still download my book, Financial Judo, which I put out in late 2015. Kind of primer on, probably not really useful for most of your audience, but I'm sure they know somebody who doesn't know much about budgets and savings. They can give them to them for free. Just give me your email address on my website. And you can always email me, phil@philipkennedy.com. Crypto just surpassing $500 billion. So if you got questions about crypto, hit me up, and do everything for free.
And if you're not already a subscriber to Phil's YouTube channel, he has a great show. He actually spends a lot more money on production and has a higher quality audio setup than I do. And you should have way over 1,000 subscribers on your channel. It should be a couple thousand already. Your content's a lot better than a lot of the other YouTube channels that are a lot higher than your channel.
Thanks so much, Jason. That means a lot.